Let's touch on Ukraine real quick.
Mm-hmm.
The war has not been going well for Mother Russia. Mr. Putin has decided we need 300,000 more troops. We're going to call them up, reservists. We're going to do a bit of a draft, etc. Now, we're going to draft people to go fight over there somewhere in a war that is actually not very popular with folks in Russia. What does that remind you of? Starts with a V, rhymes with nom. I don't know. If you say, oh, Jay, you're reaching, cool. The draft, the places where they're calling up these troops are places that are not ethnically Slavic. These are the outskirts of Russia where Chechens live, where Muslims live. We're talking about Chechnya. We're talking about Dagestan. We're talking about places that are, yes, they are part of the Russian Federation. Yes, they do speak Russian, but they are not ethnically Slavic. They oftentimes don't feel very much included in Russia. They have been oppressed every time they try to rise up and want a little bit more autonomy, etc. And so that reminds me of the way that the United States handled the beginnings of the Vietnam War when we started the draft. The draft originally, the first years when we were doing it, they were plucking. It was just black and brown folks that they were sending to the front lines. And this is what's happening there now.
Facts.
Videos are surfacing, and I'll shut up after this. Videos are surfacing, showing people arguing with the local person who's been sent there to recruit people and telling them, hey, the recruiter saying we have to go here because we have to fight for the future, and the people in Dagestan are saying I have no future now, I have no present, why do I need to go fight the Ukrainians? Videos are surfacing of people literally fleeing to Finland or anywhere else that will have them so that they don't get drafted into this war. What say you?
There's a big difference between being told to fight for your country, either as a job or because you're forced to, and a big difference between the intention of people fighting for their lives. So you can't underestimate a small number of people who are fighting for their lives over a large group of people who are being forced to fight. The motivation is different. I think it needs to be brought into question, why are we sending so much funding to the Ukraine? There are other countries closer to home that we seem a lot less interested in getting involved with. So I think the question should be asked, why are we so concerned about the Ukraine? And not because of Putin's disposition so much as we have other countries closer to home that have rulers that could be considered equally as dangerous, and we don't seem nearly as invested. Iran's going through turmoil right now because of the death of a female who was arrested by the morality police because her hijab, her hair covering, was on crooked, and she was taken to jail and died there because she was beaten to death. For all the liberation we speak of, where's the liberation movement here speaking to that in a way that's meaningful?
Mm-hmm. And let's say her name too. Her name is Mahsa Amini. Looks like 19 people have been killed so far in the national protests, including 4 elite guard members in an attack. No, now I'm seeing that there's total protesters killed 102, and there's been 920 non-fatal injuries, approximately 2,500 protesters, but I'd imagine that figure could be a lot larger.
It's shameful. There hasn't been an uprising like this since the Iranian Revolution. This speaks volumes that women are in the street cutting their hair and removing their head covering. I mean, these women are genuinely risking their lives. It's important to stand in solidarity with them, not as women, but as human beings. Again, we don't all have to agree with each other, and we don't all have to like each other, but we all should be allowed to live our lives without terror, period. Yeah. And it's shameful. And I'm disappointed in where the United States focuses and where it's not, and it needs to be called into question. Why is there such a difference in our reaction to where war takes place in the world? And what should be our role in it at this point? I mean, we gave American citizens $1,200 when the country was shut down, but we've sent billions of dollars to the Ukraine. And I think that needs to be questioned.
I think it's definitely just to question it. I think people don't want to hear the answer, though. I believe the answer is partially legitimate. We don't want Russia or anyone believing they can just annex parts of other countries like that. We haven't had people just doing that all willy-nilly since World War II. the world overall, global stability overall is better when countries don't forcibly annex other parts of other countries. Okay. But there's also a piece from a realpolitik school of thought that says the longer this drags out, the more we can drain Russia's resources, which overall puts the West in a more strengthened position when it comes to negotiations over gas, when it comes to everything. Russia sends a ton of, basically all of Central Europe gets their gas from Russia, and a lot of Western Europe does as well.
You
Putin
don't
wants
think
Ukraine
Putin
as a
has
buffer state.
you don't think Putin has planned for all of that?
That's the part that bothers me.
He's not a lunatic. And any media that reports that he is either uninformed or mischaracterizing him or underestimating him. That man is no idiot. He is not emotionally reactive. He is extremely pragmatic. He is a visionary. Whether or not you agree with that vision is a separate subject. So he shouldn't be disregarded as a madman. And I think to do so is to our own disadvantage. But
Agreed.
the United States does have a vested interest in the success of the Ukraine, and it's not just bringing democracy there. I mean, they lean more towards Russian culture than they do Western culture there. And a couple of years ago, they were involved in some questionable transactions where our own government was publicly saying that they were a compromised government and they were a compromised country. So it's a little bit interesting how much the marketing has shifted in a matter of years with regard to that war. Now, I don't wish war on anybody. It's shameful in this day and age, but that doesn't make Zelensky and the leaders of that institution saints either.
Hold on. Okay. I'm glad you brought that up. That was back when there was a different president who was put in power by Putin. The Ukrainian revolution that happened in 2014 was a result of people wanting to get that guy out of power, partially. That guy actually fled. I think his name was Viktor Yanukovych. He fled back to Russia, and he's been in Putin's care ever since. That was the person that the United States said had highly compromised the Ukrainian government, and that we believed was highly corrupt. He was
right, but no one man runs the ship alone. I mean, there are relationships. That's why so many people around Putin have died recently, because it takes a network of aristocrats to keep the plan going. No one man can keep it going. So they may have taken out the man, but the plan is still in motion.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's part of why after the 2014 revolution, Russia came in, they annexed Crimea, and they've been trying to annex the regions of Donetsk and Luhansk ever since. So when you said accurate. They lean more towards Russia, here's the thing. There's a split. The eastern part of Ukraine speaks Russian, would like to be part of Russia. The people in Crimea want to be part of Russia more or less, or at least that's what they say. There was an election in very heavy air quotes about that, but they do speak Russian there. Donetsk and Luhansk is disputed. Some people want to be Russian and lean towards that, but other people seems like would rather be Ukrainian. The rest of Ukraine, the western part of Ukraine, part of what kicked off that 2014 revolution was a voter referendum that said, "Hey, we want to move towards being part of the European Union." They want to be part of Europe, not Russia. At least that part, and that seems to be
fair.
I don't know if it's the larger part or the more populist part, but that part is
right. It's
where the Ukrainian government wants to move, as it has been interpreted by the votes of the people. So maybe a partition is the best thing to do. Let the Russian-speaking Ukrainians join Russia.
All of this is so ongoing, so we'll have to keep the conversation going as well. Thanks for joining us at Raw Food. Till next time, no artificial flavoring or preservatives.